standing here in front of the Dr. Pepper Grapette Bottling Company in West Jefferson, Ashe County. About 15-20 minutes away from the cabin in the mountains. Population in the town's about 1,300. A lot of them are coming here from Florida, crowding the place. So if you're watching this and you're from Florida and thinking about coming to the mountains, this town is located in the state of West Virginia. Now, this is going to be a segment for a sermon in our services on the weekend, and it'll stand alone, and I hope be a blessing to you as just a sermonette and a little worship experience for those who are not able to get out and worship in service with others. We're going to make this point about why we share our faith and how we share our faith, and I'm going to have my daughter, Annie, who spent many of her summers here as well, share about what her thoughts on this. Annie?
Thanks, Dad. We're all unique, and we have unique stories, and I think that is one of the things that encourages us and equips us to share our story and our faith with others. I grew up in Florida, but I spent many, many summers here as a child and as a teen. I've seen God at work. He moved me from Florida to Texas for school, and then he brought me back to North Carolina for a job. And I have stayed here, and I have spent many more wonderful times here. This is where we got engaged. My husband and I got married here. We took pictures at this facility. It's a nice tie-in, my husband being a Texan and being a Dr. Pepper lover as well. So as I've seen God at work in the good, bad, it's made it easier to share my story, to share my faith, and for others to be able to relate to it. So I hope that you'll be encouraged with your unique story to share with others. One of the ways that we show people and share with people is how we have seen it modeled and demonstrated to us. Growing up, I can remember going to the hospital with my dad and watching him visit and pray for those that were sick and needing help. And I can remember hearing him on the phone talking to people who were homebound or in the hospital or who just needed advice or some comfort. Pray with them, offer them reassurances that they're not alone. And growing up now, what I do is I try to model that. I had a coworker that I work with who had a critically ill baby not too long ago, and so I made it an effort to call, text, send food when they got home from the NICU, because I know what it's like to have somebody reach out and offer to pray or just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. That really makes a difference with people.
Annie's right. One of the ways, important ways that we share, that we go, stand, tell, that we share about the power and the love and the grace of Jesus is by serving people. Those disciples went and healed people. The lame man by the front of the temple. They showed that Jesus can make a practical difference in your life. So when you serve people, when you care for people, you're telling them about Jesus, and you're telling them Jesus can make a difference. This is Foster Memorial Presbyterian Church. I served in this church when I was in seminary. I'd drive up here on the weekends from Atlanta, preach in this and 3 other churches in the area, and I watched how Daddy did ministry. My father had been the vice president of the seminary, raised literally millions of dollars from wealthy people to build the campus and enlarge the campus. And when he retired, he would go back to those people, especially the ones in North Carolina, and especially ones who were dentists, that he knew a lot of them, and he would say, look, I need you to donate used dental equipment, and he would put it in the basement of these little churches up here. And people up here, their teeth were just, children's teeth were just falling out of their mouth. They drank Mountain Dew like water, and there were no dentists. They couldn't afford them if there were some, and they had horrible, horrible issues with dental hygiene. So on the weekends, he'd have those dentists come up from Winston-Salem and Charlotte, and they would work on them, on those children's teeth, and do practical service. Turn the camera around just real slowly now, and you're going to see the community center that's also on the same location as the church. That's an old school building that had become a community center And when I was doing ministry, there's nothing to do up here. We would hold dances. We got the key to it, swept it out, and we would hold dances for the teenagers there so they'd have something to do. And then we would buy a hay field from people, pay them $50 for what that hay would produce, and we'd keep it mowed and we'd make it into a ball field so that the kids would have something to do. And practical things. You don't just preach to people, you serve them, you make an impact on their life. So if we want to go, stand, tell for Jesus, how can I serve people? How can I tell them about Jesus? How can I show them about Jesus? And how can I impact their life on behalf of Jesus in practical, servants' hearts ways? Now, a last story I'm going to tell you is right to my right. We're going to walk over there. You follow me, Annie. We're walking over to Big Horse Creek. And when this creek would flood, when it would get when it would get real high, it would flood the basement of the church. But it was also the first place, I was 21, 22 years old, it was the first place I'd ever done baptism by immersion. We're Presbyterians, folks. We don't immerse people. But up here, they all grew up Baptists. And this is Big Horse Creek. This is one of the best fishing holes around. But it's also the place where, at that point, their parents, their grandparents were baptized in this fishing hole. And so I didn't really know how to do it. So I got on some wader boots, stood on this little rock right here and talked about it a little bit. And then, I'm not going to say his name, but he was a Little. His last name was Little. And he kind of was a heavy dude. And so when I baptized him, I got him under the water, but I didn't realize you baptize with them with their this way, so that you put them down this way so that the water flows over their face. If you put them in the water this way and then dump them under, the water's flowing up their nose. Nobody told me this. So I got Rex under the water, and I could see the water was getting under his shirt, and it was floating up above the water. And I thought, they're going to say he's going to die of gluttony if I don't get his belly underneath the water. So all this time, I didn't realize water was running up his nose. I pushed on his tummy to get his tummy under the water. At this point, all the water explodes up from his mouth, and I thought, I better bring him back up now. And I didn't just wash away, Jesus didn't just wash away his sins. We almost washed his sins out of him and drowned him at the same time. So, interesting stories about what happens when you tell people about Jesus, when you share Jesus, when you share in church, in worship, in baptism. And I'll tell you one more. You want one more story? One more story. Up this way about 2 miles is where his daddy lived. And so his daddy, after church was sometimes, and his mother would have me come up for lunch. Well, when I go into people's homes, I make myself at home. Everybody up here is kind of related. So I went in his refrigerator looking for, something to drink. Tea or something like that. And I noticed this small pint mason jar. And it had what looked like lemonade in it. So I opened it up and smelled it, and whoa, cleared out my sinuses. And so I said to his father, who's a deacon in the church, by the way, I said, Howard, what is this? And he said, oh, Brian, that's dandelion wine. Now, it wasn't until about a day later that I realized he had moonshine in there. Everybody up here made it, drank it. So it's all kind of interesting stories about when you serve God. There's fascinating things that you encounter. People are endlessly fascinating. Ministry of serving people, telling people about Jesus. It gives you a lifetime worth of joy and of laughter.